Okay, well, hey, everybody. We're glad to be together again on our Serenity Book Club. We're happy to be a part of your families. Those of you who are on Facebook, we're glad to see you guys logging on. And welcome to all of our guests here at on our Zoom as we continue this wonderful discussion. As we've talked about before, we are in Serenity Book Club and we are doing Mirror Moments by Pastor Stephen Thurston, one of the pastors of our churches. And he has had a great discussion of many items throughout his book regarding relationships. And so we've talked about relationships from male and female. We've talked about it from husband and wife, and we've talked about it from friendships. And so today we're talking about it again from a more relational standpoint. And the chapter that we're discovering at this moment is called We Just Can't Be Friends, or Can We? Which was a really interesting read, I think, for all of us. And so, why don't everybody just say hello as we get started this morning, and then we'll have a word of prayer.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Well, good morning.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Charles.
Okay. All right. Well, we're glad that everybody is here. Let's start with a word of prayer. We thank you, Lord God, for just good materials from Christian writers who have given us a wide spectrum of topics to look at and discover. Father, even some things to mirror and to see for ourselves. God, we honor you and thank you and bless you, God, for all that you will continue to do. Bless this discussion for both here on Zoom and those who have joined us on Facebook. We're just going to give you glory, honor, and praise. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen and amen. So thank you guys for joining. And those of you who are joining us on Facebook, we're glad that you are here as well. So we just can't be friends, or can we? I want to start his first place out of the gate. He talks about whether or not ending a relationship is always as cut and dry as it should be. Sometimes we think that once that relationship ends, it should just be done. We should move on, it should be cut and dry. But he challenges us and says, does it really have to end? But there's some parameters by which that ends and whether or not you can have a friendship or not. I thought it was interesting, like right near the end of that page, where he says that some people's transitions can really work. He said that he recalled years back going back and attending a Thanksgiving dinner in which there were three ex-wives and a ex-husband there, and that they were all getting along. And I just thought that that was a very interesting perspective of very mature people who have found a way to engage and interact without being disagreeable. What were your thoughts on that, guys?
For me, I don't see it.
Not realistically?
No, I don't. I just don't see it. It's not realistic to me at all. I don't know. I mean, we should be because we're supposed to love no matter what. But as flesh, we have hangups. So I feel they would be a little hard. But that's just me.
Okay. Anyone else? Any thoughts about that? Do you think it's unrealistic for that to have happened? Or do you think that people with mature relationships can actually have these friendships? Because he goes on to these parameters a little bit later. I just wanted to hear from you all's perspective. Nita, did you have anything you wanted to say about that?
I think it kind of depends on what happened in a relationship that caused the breakup. And I also think about the fact that some people are very good friends and then they, get into a relationship or even a marriage. And then they find that they can't be compatible in that type of relationship, but they can still be friends afterward.
Okay. Charles, did you want to say
No,
anything about that? No?
I'll say something. I think that's impossible. My man has three ex-wives, not one, not two, but three ex-wives at the same place at the same time. Now, I tell you, that's a hard one to buy right there. Who invited all three of them? How did all three of them get there? Did he invite all three? I don't see this working no way, no how. And let's compound it. What if two or three of them have children together? You know, multiply all type of issues. I don't see this happening no way, no how. I think the earth could hit the moon before something like this happens.
Well, I got the impression based upon what he was saying is that there might be children involved. Maybe I read through the lines a little bit, but it seemed like they had a reason to be together rather than us just socially hanging out. Because I can't imagine just hanging out for the purpose of it, of hanging out. So,
Yeah,
uh,
anything short of a funeral, the death of someone, I just don't see them having Christmas, Thanksgiving, Hanukkah, or even 4th of July together. I just don't see it.
Okay, all right. Well, that's a good point. I'm looking here and seeing if there's any comments from Facebook. Right now, there are none. So we're going to go on and move on. So as we look at this further, he goes on and talks about how the reality that some friendships alone are complex, but they add to our emotional, physical connection that once shared with an individual that makes things more complicated. And so he says, I'm going to cut through the chase. And he says, should I reach out and engage him or her, or should I let sleeping dogs lie? And so before we get into his points itself, do you think that we should let the relationships that end? Or do you think that because of the relationships that you had or the friendships that they are there, or the connections even through children, that you should still have those friendly connections? What are your thoughts, guys? And Carol's on Facebook today. She says, so welcome, Carol. We're glad that you're joining us via Facebook today.
I don't see it. Even with children, I think the children should get along well because they're related. And I think I need to be cordial to the other person, but friendly, I just don't see it. There's too much, all kind of tension in between. I don't care how the breakup went. There had to be some hurt and unresolved issues in order for the breakup to happen. And I don't see it. Not with three other, no.
Well, no, Carol, we're glad that you were able to join us. We know that you have meetings and what have you, but we're glad that you're able to join us. So you all on Facebook, you all just jump in at any time that you want. He goes on and says that some of the criteria for whether or not you can still be friends or not comes from how authentic are you. It says here, real friends engage in authentic conversations where they share openly and expose themselves. Are you willing to speak truth and receive truth as well, or do you censor yourself and omit details because the truth could impact your hidden motive of reuniting? Do you think that people might not be as authentic in that relationship because they're trying to save that and savor that so that they can reunite at another time?
Yes. And oftentimes it is. Is first thing about being authentic, it's hard to be authentic with somebody you have had a communication problem with in the first place. Because if you at this stage now, there's somewhere some lack of communication, some lack of untruth, some lack of something that have come about to bring this to this point. So it's very hard for me to believe that we could be just as willing and openly as everything like nothing have happened.
Any more thoughts here on Facebook or here on Zoom? Anywhere? One of the things that authenticity means is that you're able to be very real with that person, and you do it in a way that is genuine and not hurtful. Carol from Facebook says that yes, she's experienced that. It didn't work because he wanted to keep a door open, and I didn't feel as though he was sincere. But it's not to say that everyone is like that, it just depends upon the person. So sometimes the authenticity is not there because there are hidden motives that are involved in that. Um, but friendships that are sincere really require honesty between the two individuals. And just like you have best friends and people, even in same sex relationships, and I don't mean same sex in terms of gay or lesbian, but I'm talking about even your friendship groups. There has to be that level of honesty to talk with one another and to have that. Then the number two was, is your ex your backup plan? Are you trying to get back together with them or keep that friendship because you just want to kind of keep them around? Do you all think that that's true here on Zoom or those on Facebook? Just from your observation or just from your own self, some of the things that he was sharing in that section.
You know, whether it's be a friend, a spouse, significant other, whatever. I see people who try. They know they hurt you. They know they did something wrong, but there's still usefulness in you for them. And I feel that they do kind of keep you as a backup plan. They don't just said like a girlfriend. We might always went to the movies together. And now she's missing that. So she wants you around so you could be that movie partner still to go with her. But she only using you for that and she still have her, her other life where she's doing whatever she wants. I'm not sure, but
Nita, do you have anything to say about that?
I think, excuse me, I think people do use that as a backup. I agree with Carol as far as it depends on the individual, what their motives are. And there was something else I was going to say, but I forgot.
That's okay. Before we get to Charles, from Facebook, Vivian said it depends upon the relationship you and he had when you all were together. And then Carol comes back and says, I always believe that if people are sincere, they should try to at least be friends. But again, it depends upon the people. What are your thoughts on that, Charles? You're on mute.
You froze. No, no, you froze for a second. So I
Oh, okay.
didn't hear the question in its entirety. But
Oh,
I'll respond to that real briefly. What I believe Vivian said, I think is accurate and right on. Vivian from Facebook said,
that it depends
I
upon.
think that really just hits the nail right on the head.
Okay,
Yeah.
depends upon the people. Okay. All right. He goes on and says also that do you behave as friends? And he gives some criteria there. He says when you move on, that you were genuinely are when they move on, will you be genuinely happy for them? You know, is that something that you feel or they feel for you? You have to know whether or not that's genuine. Will you be happy for them if they meet someone new? And then when you talk about your new relationship, do they get emotional? Do they get angry or defensive? Can you depend upon the support of you? And if they got married and invited you, would you attend the ceremony? If you got drunk high, would you sleep with them? And then if the emotions of anger, pinning, frustration, uncertainty, or longing flare up, whether or not you think of them, would signal that you're together and there's some emotional baggage yet to unpack. Do you agree or disagree with any of those items? Those of you who are on Facebook or right here on Zoom. Well, one of the things that it keeps on saying is that do you behave as friends? Is this something that really is a true friendship? I think going back to his authenticity, do you feel like, if you're friends, you're not going to be as emotionally tied up with that individual if you're not friends? If you just still have that romantic spark, then there's always going to be that little tinge. But this is what he was saying. Are there any thoughts before we move on to the next section, or do you all agree with that?
I think you have to be honest with the individual as well as honest with yourself as far as what your feelings, your true feelings are.
That's an important statement, Nita. Carol from Facebook says, I only agree if you can take it. You have to be a very mature person, and you have to be really healed up from the relationship. That was what Carol was saying. Any more thoughts before we move to the next section? All right. Well, the next section talks about accept their pain. If you're the one who ended the relationship, the chances that your ex has complex feelings about that. Don't be pushy regarding the friendship and accept the need for emotional space from you at times, especially early in the process. Vivian from Facebook says, I can be civil, but when I'm through, that's it. So I'm not sure if that means that you can't be a friend, Vivian, or whether or not you're just done. I think that that's what you're saying to us, but I don't want to assume. So if you're done, you're done, and that there should not be a friendship that continues to entreat from that. What are you all's thoughts regarding that?
I totally agree with Miss Vivian.
You're
When
with
you're
her on
done,
that?
yes, you're done, you're done. I could be cordial to you. We could be in the same space and all that good stuff, but we're done. There's, I'm just done.
Okay.
I have to agree with Vivian and Carolyn. When you're done, you're done. It's just too bumpy. There's just too many things to deal with. What's a friendship? What's a romantic? What's this? What's that? This boundary, do I cross this boundary? Do I not? Just call it, make it a clean break. Best
Okay.
breaks are clean.
Well, I think that there are some people who do. She says that there are some people who do. They feel like they can be mature enough to continue that friendship along the way. And so I think that that's why there's different people on different sides of the fence that encounter that. I'm not sure, Carol, if you agree with Charles or you just agree with that you can sometimes be that way. Well, one of the things that he talks about that if you do have these friendships, that you need to establish these boundaries early so that you don't wind up going over the fence. There's some people who can't be friends; they just can't be friends. But others, we can be friends and keep on going through that. Don't treat it like a relationship because that's important for you. Is that if you are going to be in a friendship, the friendship is different than the relationship. The expectations are different. And just like he says here, is that you don't have the right to get upset over certain things if you're a friend. This is, because your relationship has changed. You're now in a friendship mode and not a relationship. It also says that you're not supposed to rehash old fights if you remain as friends, because that then begins to disturb the curb of that. Carol from Facebook says, I agree. Some people can, but she says she's not one of them. And then she goes, LOL. So, one of the things is that if you're going to be friends, he suggests that you make sure that you keep it casual and fun. Um, there are many people that I'm still friends with that, there's no relationship, no romantic things that are there, but there's still the opportunity to just laugh or have fun. And then it says for you to act like an adult. The process of adjusting is a new normal, and that people need to learn how to act like adults. So I guess if you do make the choice to not be friends, that you still need to, if you decide to be friends because you can do that, then you have to act like adults and not act like children or teenagers regarding your madness and all of those jealousies that normally come up with that. It's interesting that we're talking about this from an adult standpoint and not from a young person's perspective. And so maybe it's even maybe a cultural thing, or maybe it's an age related thing. But I think that part of it is that is how you end it may be impacting how you're able to engage with that relationship. What are your thoughts on that, guys?
I agree with what you just said as far as how you how things ended, but I also agree with everything else. You do have to. I think you do have to set boundaries. You do have to act like adults and limit your activity or whatever to things that don't bring up those situations that occurred that caused the relationship to break up in the first place.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Any more thoughts before we move on to the next chapter on double dip?
I think it certainly is generational. Certainly, you expect a person. See, most of y'all here are about 20, so a person 20 is going
Yeah.
to be much different than someone much older, let's say 50. So I think it is generational. Uh, but again, you're 20-year-olds. You all are 20-year-olds. So you got to look at things much differently than a 30, 40-year-old. Certainly, it's generational.
Okay. Well, I think because he has a broad perspective and a broad audience of people that he's writing to, I think that there's some things that we can apply and some that we can't. I find it interesting that most of you all felt like you all can't be friends at the end of those relationships, but and it could be generational, it could be cultural, it could be a lot of different things that are going on. But I think that it's an interesting perspective, and I'm glad we have a chance to talk about this. In his next chapter, he talks about this double dip. And he talks about the fact that there is a study published in the Journal of Personality. Dr. Stephanie Spellman explored the connection between the fear of being single and the desire to re engage an ex. And so that is one of the things that is a thought as to why people can't be single or they cannot continue to be on their own, that they want to re-engage with that because single life can be scary. For some people it's fine, they're accustomed to being alone, they're fine with being alone, they work out doing alone, and it does not bother them. But for others, it says here that it's scary especially if your ex is an individual that you developed a deep, intimate connection with, and the grips of loneliness and hesitancy to step back into the murky waters of dating, it can be easily to forget the compatibility issues that you two experienced. And sometimes just that desire for the romantic conversation and relationship will cause you to re engage with someone that is potentially um, ruminating on their problems. He goes on and says that if you're hungry and a tad lazy, then you're fully aware that it's not the healthiest option, but you'll find yourself in a drive through line in the nearest fast food chain simply because it's convenient and easily accessible. What are your thoughts? Do you think that people return to one another because they're just inherently lazy?
I think that's one of the reasons. And I also think it's because of familiarity. They have become so used to that person and their ways and what they do that they're not feeling comfortable with going out, not knowing what they get into next. So I think it's a little of both. Just a little being lazy. You don't want to. I think it's more just knowing that person, knowing who they are and what they're doing, and it feels like a safe zone to you. Maybe that's what I should say. It feels like a safe zone, especially with all the stuff in the world now going on. You don't know what STD you're gonna get or HIV or whatever abusive relationship you might get into. You know this person, so it feels safe to you.
Nita, were you going to say something? I saw you unmute.
Yeah, I I agree with what you said. I can't remember what it was, but I agree with this, with what you said as far as, oh, it was the drive through, um, being lazy. I agree with that. Some people, it's just being lazy. I agree with Carolyn as far as familiarity. Um, thinking back on the good times, it seems like to me that you just think about the good times and you forget about the bad times till you get back into it. But I also think that some people, it's hard for them to be alone. They are not comfortable in themselves, and to realize that they don't have else to be okay.
Okay, I saw Charles unmute for a second. Did you have something?
Yes, I think certainly familiarity is very important. Someone that you know, someone that you've been with, certainly they have the inside track. As the old saying goes, it's better sometimes to know the devil that you know as opposed to the devil you don't know. And at least you know the good and bad points about as opposed to someone new. You have to learn all these things. You got to be on your best behavior. You got to do all these things that you may not very well want to. So I think that's one reason.
That's good. On your best behavior. I love that. Vivian from Facebook says that some people think that they have a need, that they have or need to have someone in their lives. I enjoy my own company and I like being alone with no drama. And then Carol says, I wouldn't say lazy, I think lonely. We go back to what's familiar with. Yeah. So I think that there is all those elements that work in. Sometimes it's laziness. Sometimes, as I think Charles put it, is just, the devil that you're with as opposed to the demon that you might be meeting. And I think that people tend to stay in that or try to reconnect with that rather than moving on. He goes on and says that if you do move on, don't try to recreate the same relationship. I think that that's an important element that people don't realize is that you can't make that next relationship the same as the last relationship that you were in. And I wonder if that's sometimes what's disappointing to the people who are engaged in relationship because I had this with this person and this is what we did or this is what we liked or what have you, and then all of a sudden because now I'm with this person, I'm trying to make them into this new relationship. Do you think that that's true? Carol says yes from Facebook. What do you all say here?
I agree with Carol from Facebook.
I think people do that, but I don't think that's fair to put that on someone else.
True, 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 true. I think that sometimes we find ourselves trying to recreate it because whatever the euphoria that you had from that previous relationship, you want to engage that in this relationship, not realizing that you all are now two different individuals than the relationship that was before. Any more thoughts before we move to this next section? It says, take responsibility for your role in the breakup. Oftentimes, we always blame the other people for relationship breakups, so because of what they did and what have you, and we never take stock of ourselves and what we contributed in that, and so we wind up taking that into the next relationship. Do you all find that that is true? That's kind of what he's alluding to in this section. What about you guys in terms of baggage? Do you find, and it might not be you guys individually, but it might be relationships that you all have observed. Do you find that people just kind of take the same emotional baggage, not own up to their own stuff, and go into another relationship without clearing the closet, so to speak?
I'm going to say, just observing people, I have noticed people seem to jump out of one and into another before they have time to get rid of that old baggage. They, you need to stop when you're in a relationship before you move on to another to get to know you better,
Mm-hmm.
to get to know how to improve on yourself better. It's not so much an improvement the other person because you can't change them.
Mm-hmm.
You need to improve who you are and find out what you really want and what you really need. But they just jumping. They don't know. If you ask them, well, what you looking for? They can't even tell you. So yeah, I do feel that that happens a lot.
Very good. Anyone else on that insight? Do you think that we jump too quickly into another relationship without assessing what happens in the one in the past?
Well, I think some people are relationship addicts. They feel the need to always be in a relationship. Relationship breaks up 2 weeks later, in another relationship. And I think that it's false to a lot of things, commercialization, our country, things like that. That if you're single, something's wrong with you. So you should be in a relationship, either married or not. And I think it's taught us to become, as I said, um, relationship addicts. And do we have a need to always be in one? And do we can't just be alone with ourselves?
You mean like Vivian had said that she likes and enjoys her own company. So I think Carol says here, she said that's hard for her to say. She said that I can't say for myself, but I think it's possible. I believe a person needs to reevaluate their self and be alone for a while before they jump into another relationship. And I think that that assessing is an important part of it, because if you don't assess what went badly in the previous one, then you'll wind up going into another relationship and it might have been you. It might have been you that didn't, that were not mature, didn't have flexibility, was compulsive, as Charles was saying, just had the need to be in another relationship habitually. It could be just a whole number of things that keep us continuing to connect without having great assessment. One of the things that he also says is make sure that you're emotionally uh, available. And sometimes people are not emotionally available. What are your thoughts about that? Do you think that people are emotionally unavailable and that's why they're in trouble with these relationships? No? Okay. Well, I think emotional unavailability does come sometimes when people are invested in being in a relationship, but they're not really invested in contributing to a relationship. They want to be a part of someone's life or have someone in their life, but they're not willing to lay down all of their heart. That's where those blocks that we normally put up, those barriers, those walls that come between people in a relationship. Um, I think here Carol says that's she says that that's true. We are not emotionally available, and sometimes that lack of emotional available is what we think keeps us safe. Because if I don't give my whole heart, if I don't give all of who I am, that I don't get hurt. I can walk away from the relationship. There's no scars, no pain, and so, but I can be with you because your company, but I don't want to lose something in that. So what are your thoughts with that before we move on?
On that point you just made, you're not giving your all to the relationship. So you are already destroying the relationship before it began
Mm,
because you're not invested in this relationship because you're trying to protect yourself from being hurt.
mm-hmm,
So yeah, it's you need to be completely available if you're going to get into a relationship. Otherwise, just wait until you get to that point.
mm, mm-hmm. Anyone else regarding that?
So do
I
you
like what
actually want?
Carolyn is saying. I'm sorry.
Go on, Charles.
I like what Carolyn is saying. You're torpedoing the relationship if you just got one foot in the deep water. Um, if you got one foot in deep water and you got one foot on dry land, where are you? You're in a not relationship. We could call it a fake relationship, so to speak. And that's exactly what you're in. You're just not there yet, and you don't want to be there yet.
Very good. Good point. Nita?
So do you actually want a relationship, or you just want a friend?
Hmm. That's good. Well, wouldn't it be appropriate to say those things rather than have the impression that you are there for more? Nita?
Definitely,
Yeah,
definitely.
some honesty there. Yes. That's very good comments, you guys. Very good comments. So he says, make sure you're relationship ready. He said, if you're not in a space where you feel comfortable and it's okay being yourself, then you're not ready to be with someone else. In the space you're in right now, if you met someone who wanted to date you, if you don't like or love who you are, or I'm sorry, if you don't like or love you, how can you expect someone else to? I think that that's an interesting thing. Vivian from Facebook says you keep waiting for something to happen. And so there is, are you ready? Are you emotionally ready? Are you physically ready? Are you mentally ready? Is your heart ready to dive in again? Or are you just looking for some fun?
I just read an article similar to that recently. It was saying how people try to say we're just friends,
Mm-hmm.
but it doesn't normally work because somebody wind up falling in love when the other's trying to do that one foot in and one foot out thing. So it doesn't normally work. They claim anyway. So
So, Carolyn, do you think that if a person is honest from the beginning and they say, we're just going to be friends, but they realize that the emotions have gone too far, they're not honest enough to say, I got to step back from this, according to the article that you read?
according to the article, it's saying no.
Oh, wow.
One wind up falling in love. Said it normally doesn't work. One wind up falling in love and the others don't. So it doesn't work. One won't to just be friends. And one actually wind up falling in love with them, and the things that used to be or they have. The, the article says no.
Okay. Interesting. Anybody else want to jump in on that? Nita, Charles, anybody from Facebook? He goes on to say, don't force it. Just because your match doesn't mean you fit. You may look good together on paper. Those who know you paint you two as the perfect couple. You may check out all the boxes on each other's checklist, but keep in mind why it didn't work our last time for the two of you who tried again. And so he talks about public perception and pleasing people aren't solid reasons to make things work. As you get to know each other again at the age and the stage of life, you may discover that your ex may not be where you are moving in a direction that's parallel in life trajectory. Trying to fast forward things would be a mistake and scars your relationship for life. What are your thoughts on that, guys? Okay.
I don't know why we find ourselves trying to please other people.
Mm,
We need to please ourselves. If we're happy and we pleasing ourselves in this relationship, I'm sorry, this is me. I don't care what you think. You know, you can look at me and you can say, well, this is the worst relationship in the world. Why don't you just leave? But I could find joy in whatever we have and whatever is going on. So I need to please me first. And they need to be pleased. And as long as the two of us are happy, okay.
so you're not looking for the perfect relationship. You're not looking for the check boxes, and
Other than
nor are you compelled to stay because some people think that you're perfect together.
that's it. You don't have a perfect relationship. In any relationship, you're going to have ups and you're going to have downs. So you need to learn how to work in between those and come together with those. Even if you don't agree, just come to a point where you could just respect each other, you know, thoughts, each other belief, whatever. You can work it out. The only perfect relationship I have found thus far is with my Lord Jesus Christ.
Hmm.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, because every other one is because we have imperfect people. We're imperfect people.
Yes.
And because we're imperfect people, we're going to have imperfect relationships because we're not perfection. And so we can check every box that we think that's capable. And I think that there are some essentials that are deal breakers. But once you've identified, beyond the deal breakers that you have, just realize that people are people and they're going to make mistakes. People are people and they're going to do some things that are sometimes irritating, just like you irritate other people. But still, is it worth it to end the relationship just because you all are imperfect people, or do you all have enough stock to be together on your own accord and not for what other people think? And that's an important thing. I think we have time to go to friends with benefits. If you all had a chance to take a look at that, um, he talks about friends with benefits, and oftentimes we think about the friends of benefits that you see like on television or movies, and it's not the same that he refers to here. He's talking about here in terms of it's highly likely that if you start a relationship with no boundaries, that you're more likely than not to stay there. As the relationship progresses, you'd be unwise to assume that it will magically or miraculously turn into a healthy relationship along the way. And he refers the Pretty Woman movie. If you all are unfamiliar with the Pretty Woman movie, that's the millionaire who meets a prostitute on the street, and somehow because of this convenience of a relationship, they wind up falling in love, and you assume by the end of the movie that they're going to get married, but you never know for sure because there was never a part two. But then he goes on and says, because there's no real commitment in friends with benefit arrangements, you end up shorting your value. How people treat us and value us is less to do with them and more to do with the value they write on the price tags. he goes on talks about how people are frustrated in these friends with benefits relationships, and this is not about sex, this is just about the convenience of being together, and whether or not there is a commitment with these friends with benefit relationships or not, or whether or not their commitment is the price that you pay for this relationship for offering yourself at a deep discount. So we're good for one another, maybe politically, or we're good for one another financially because we can work together to do a business, or we can work together to do this, or we work together for whatever other reason. But this commitment is not real. I think Charles had said earlier, those kind of fake relationships that continue to have a deep discount. But even though he talks about that you're charging admission, he says charging admission to your commitment. There is nothing that's real about this. It's just a rational reason to be together rather than the emotional thing. And then he goes on and says, and he gets into that, he says, whether or not it be a hug, a kiss, or sex, our bodies are wired to release chemicals, that physically intimacy that causes us to feel connected to another person. And so it is diminishing the relationship for whatever the benefits are. What are your thoughts with that, guys? Because that was a whole lot to consume in that chapter.
That's what,
Carol,
that's what,
Carol, Carol for Facebook says we need to be honest with ourselves, and Vivian says you keep waiting for something to happen. But one of the things that we have to understand is that relationships with benefits, are they worth it? Does it do any good for the relationship if there's only benefits and no emotions?
I don't think so in any relationship. A friend relationship, a spouse, family relationship, whatever. If you just can't, people are not doing that for you to use when you need to be, for your gain. It's a give and take relationship in any relationship. So I don't, that's back to that article I read. Friends with benefit to me in any relationship just don't work. You need to have a relationship, not just to get what you need from them, and they're not getting nothing from you. So I don't know.
I saw Charles unmuted.
Okay, what do we mean by benefits? We mean someone to go pre-COVID, go to dinner with, go to the show, go to a football game, or whatever, something you like to do, bowling, pool. Do we mean benefits like that, or is it something much more sexual? We use the term benefit.
He
Just
says
so
in
we're clear.
Yeah, he says in this particular chapter
Uh,
that you are likely to start a relationship without boundaries, where you stay there. You are at this point where it's just a convenience. It's someone who's available for you to do whatever, whether or not in the business sense, or maybe but you are in this relationship. You call it a relationship, but it really isn't. I think what you might be referring to is just dating someone. If you're dating someone and you get someone to go out with you to go to a movie, or you get another person to go out and do whatever. But he's talking about where there is really no commitment in the friends with benefits arrangements, because you shorten the value. He goes on and says that how people treat us and value us has less to do with them and more to do with the value that we write on their price tags. Are they the people that you just want on your arm when you go to an event because they look good to you? or is it someone that you have a real commitment with? And so I think he identifies that sometimes, and I think that to Carol's point in the article that she read, that sometimes people think, well, we're just in this friends with benefits relationship to do these things together, but one person winds up falling in love and the other one has no commitment to it. Carol from Facebook says, I don't believe in a relationship with the benefits. She said, to be honest, for you and the other person. Um, and then Vivian says, you need emotions to feel any connection. Yeah. So I think that that's what he's referring to. He's not talking about, just casual dating. He's talking about when you're with someone just for what benefits they can give you as opposed to an emotional connection. Did that make it clearer?
No, not really. Okay. If you are in a business relationship with someone and they're your partner, once a male, once a female, they're partners. That happens all the time. Procter and Gamble. It happens all the time where one member of one sex and another member are business relationship. They have a business relationship that does quite well. They have two people that see things from different perspectives. Um, so I don't think you can just limit that. We need probably more of that, more MBE, MBWs, minority business women working together with men. So we certainly need that. Um, I think that when we use the word relationship, I think we talk about much more sensual, much more one-on-one. A business relationship can be one woman with three guys or four guys as partners. So I don't really see what the
Oh, no.
difference is.
He's not, but he's not talking about just a partner. I mean, because we can have business partners. There are
Right.
people all the time that have businesses together that are male and female who have nothing but the connection of that. He is talking about, I I have you in my life. I tell you we're in a relationship, but we're not really in a relationship. We're in a relationship because of the benefit that it is to you or the benefit that it is to them, but there is no emotion connecting. And one of the things, to Carol's point, she says that obviously sometimes when you have that one-to-one relationship, regardless of whether or not it's benefit or you're my eye candy or whatever it is, that one person who agrees to this winds up going deeper than the original agreement. And he's saying that friends with benefits don't work. That's what he's saying.
Give me an example. What is the benefit? I think you named one. What is the benefit? Eye candy, um, other things. It certainly depends on what's the benefit. What's the quid pro quo? What goes between the two people? Then sure, certainly it may or may not work, depending on what's the benefit.
Yeah, he gave an example. We were talking about the Pretty Woman example, the movie Pretty Woman, and he was saying how the benefit for them is that this millionaire in this movie has this prostitute who comes and looks good for him and what have you. And it's just a business deal in his mind, but she becomes emotionally attached. And how sometimes we think that we're into a bit of friends with benefit situation, but someone in that relationship winds up going deeper than what was expected. And that's why he's saying friends with benefits don't work. Well, I think that we are at the end of what we can cover. I think we have one more chapter. No, I take that back. It's two more chapters. Next week we'll have to cover because we are at our bewitching hour. I thank you guys for joining us today to talk about these great subjects. Thank you guys, all of you who have tuned in on Facebook, and for those of you who weighed in on Facebook as well. And we're so appreciative of you, Nita and Charles and Carolyn, being with us today as we talked about this mirror moment. Once again, this is Mirror Moments. Written by Pastor Stephen J. Thurston. When you're facing the realities of success, struggle, and both are necessary, those internal triggers that happen in relationships. We have to learn how to change what's within in order for us to ultimately change what's around us. And so, thank you guys for being a part of us today on our Serenity Book Club. Thank you guys for being a part of us today, and God bless you.
Thank you very much, Reverend. You have a very nice day. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
you.